Welcome back to Leverage Radio. Today we have a very special guest on the show, Professor Miles Lucas, a BJJ black belt under Dave Camarillo. He's also a Wim Hof Method breathing expert and trainer. He's conducting a seminar with us this weekend as well. A man with a fascinating story. Miles, thank you so much for doing this. It's an honor to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. The honor is all mine. It's my pleasure to share these tools of long lost tools almost of optimization. We lost you.
Yeah, I think Ashwin left. He's just popping in. Yeah. At the outset, man, we had some great feedback from your last workshop, the one you did a few weeks ago with our team.
Good.
And
we haven't talked since then, so I'd love
we haven't.
Yeah, let's chat about it.
I think a lot of people started adopting this breathing technique right after. I know a lot of people were familiar with the Wim Hof method through the mobile app, which I think about 6 months to a year ago, a few of us ended up downloading. But doing that seminar with you, it was kind of different because we were able to go deep.
Very nice. Even across the world too. How about that? It didn't, that's really neat to connect. This world has gotten a little bit smaller over the last few months, hasn't it?
No, it did leave a mark on a lot of the guys at the academy, and they've been asking me questions like I am some expert on it. I don't know how to explain to them that I know less than them probably. What did I miss when I went off? Sorry, my Wi-Fi went out for a second.
Oh, literally nothing. We just, I was just giving him some good feedback about the workshop. And what can we expect from the one that's coming up this Sunday, Miles?
So, as you noticed that in the previous one, I take what the Wim Hof curriculum, which in my estimation, to me, it's just perfect because it is quite simple. And that's the goal, is to sort of demystify some of the ways we make these chemical changes, and then I put on top my recipe, which maybe helps me get there a little bit faster, and then I'm able to interact with your guys a little bit and get some questions, and then help them get to these chemical changes a little bit faster too, right? With a few suggestions. So what we're going to do for the advanced one, I have a few different things that I like to do that are really, they're a little bit further outside the curriculum of the Wim Hof stuff. So to be able to share those things, I mean, that's just, that's like my passion level 11, right? So, we got some, we make these cool chemical changes through the amazing Wim Hof stuff. And then we've discovered, I've been doing this about 5 years. I have a friend of mine here who, my partner in crime a bit, helping me with the breath fitness stuff, and we're always experimenting with how this breath work changes and improves for jiu-jitsu or running or activity in general. And so we got some great tips on how to get there fast, and then some interesting exercises that we'll do with it, and just to be able to, the eventual goal is we lead you to water and you have to drink. So the eventual goal is we're out of there. I mean, the eventual goal is you forgot where you even learned this from. All of a sudden, these are these tools that you own, and now you're sharing it with people, and you don't even know where it came from anymore. But it's because it's just so innate inside you. And so that's my goal for after this advanced one. It's a lofty goal. I get it.
That's so
Maybe not
exciting.
everyone.
That's very exciting. I'm not gonna lie. So,
amazing.
Miles, how did you get into this, man? How did you discover the Wim Hof method?
Yeah. So I used to get congested and get sick quite often. So often it was debilitating as far as making a schedule that I wanted to do something. Like, say, if I wanted to sign up for a competition in 2 months, man, I really didn't know if I was going to feel 100% for that competition. I just couldn't gauge whether or not I was going to get, like, whatever you want to call it, allergies or sick symptoms, all this stuff. Seasonal flu. Yeah, that's a terrible, I hate that word right there. So we're supposed to get each season, we're supposed to get a flu, you know, but that's real. That is absolutely real. And I had a seasonal flu. I'm going to write that down. I love that. I had a seasonal flu. I mean, for, I don't know, 20 years or something. And so, as soon as I started doing the breath work, I felt the immediate charge, right? I listened to Joe Rogan's first podcast with Wim, October 2015. I remember because it was live, and I started doing the breath work. I do like to play around with mental changes, you know, meditation or you know, other substances or whatever, just kind of see what's out there. Right. And this got me out there a little bit. And I thought, man, it's time. I got to figure this stuff out. And so I was a regular practitioner from the day that I started. And then I didn't get sick. I didn't get congestion for a year and a half. I got no seasonal flu. It was over.
This is after practicing for how long?
After practicing, so I started practicing it, and then I kind of practiced it on a daily basis immediately. Right. But I experimented. And that's what's so neat about this stuff. What I discovered studying this and other breathing modalities is that all breath work works in some way.
Yeah.
And how does it work? Well, I think that I think that we're not breathing enough. We don't really understand, at least I didn't. We don't really understand what our breath process does for us, how it benefits us. And it's a little bit weak. Most people's, I think, are a little bit weak because they're not taking these big expansive breaths because of these creature comforts of our lives, right?
I can vouch for that mistake myself.
Yeah. I mean, all of us. I mean, you're not alone, right? We all are luckily have jackets and AC and comfy couches and all this stuff. So with the smallest amount of intentional breath work, you start to get these changes. And so it doesn't really matter what breath work you choose. You just pick one that you're going to be consistent with, and then you'll start to notice how your body starts to adapt with it. And then that's it. So I was off and running. As soon as I started doing this stuff, I started adding it to my workouts. I started adding it to all these different things. And I didn't even touch the cold stuff for 6 months. I didn't even think about it. I thought those guys were crazy. I wasn't into that part at all.
Wim's advanced guys are basically all the time in freezing temperatures without their shirts on and just keep breathing through it.
It's just ice baths, right? Yeah.
Ice baths and climbing mountains. And I really thought those guys were crazy. But so I added the breath work to my workouts, and I'm doing some breath work and I'm working out, you know, and trying to prepare for jiu-jitsu a little bit better. And then all of a sudden I realized that, man, I was really sweating pretty profusely when I'm doing my very simple workout routine. And I thought, does it have to do with the breath work? Is this why I'm sweating? So I cut out the workout and I just did the breath work, which is it was a pretty intense routine. Sure enough, I'm drenched. I said, okay, now I understand. Is this why these knuckleheads are going out in the, you know, cold and they're able to handle this and stuff? And sure enough. So I actually adapted to the cold quite quickly because I already had been practicing the breath work for so long.
Nice.
And I was off and running. Yeah, it was just cold exposure. So that also helps with the immunity stuff a little bit. And then at some point I realized that it's, you can add in heat. You know, even Wim did it when he ran in Death Valley. He ran a marathon.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And so what I realized is that it's stress. So we are not stressed enough because we are these soft, wonderful creatures
of comfort. Yeah.
And so we learn how to apply a little bit of stress, just like a dumbbell curl would be a little bit of stress on your bicep, and then we can grow from that. So it's been just an amazing journey, and then controlling the amount of stress and improving it and changing it. It's so applicable for everybody. It's so fun to teach this stuff.
You know, you mentioned that you pick a breath pattern, any breath pattern, and it does make a difference. So what I've been personally doing myself is, so I have a deviated septum, so I wake up every morning with like a dripping in the back of my throat and just all kinds of stuffiness. But I started doing the Hickson Gracie fire type breathing, where I just breathe out through my nose. And I would realize that I'd wake up with everything clear, no phlegm, none of that nonsense, and I just just clears everything up. But I'm still lazy to do it, and I still haven't made it a habit.
Okay.
But that, I mean, I have noticed a big change. And it's fascinating, man. Who would have thought that more people wouldn't be using it?
That's probably the most shocking thing. When you start your first class of this stuff, you're like, well, this is one of the most powerful tools I've ever experienced. How in the world did we not know how to do this since we were kids? You know, well, this could be the first class as a kid. And, it's massive. It really is.
And I mean, I think the exact same way about BJJ as well. I mean, the amount of people that walk around not knowing this martial art and waste years of their lives on gaining false confidence and hope, and then transition to BJJ and have life-changing experiences. I think it does cross over to BJJ as well, which brings me to my follow-up question. So you are a Dave Camarillo black belt, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How tough was that over the years? Because, I mean, the image I think Dave and Dan Camarillo have in the BJJ world is of being tough guys, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how were those years, and what was it like learning from these guys over the years?
So I did move around a lot. And so I got my brown belt and black belt from Dave and Matt Darcy, which is who runs another big academy in the area. And it was pretty amazing experience. And I can say too very confidently that the level there was quite high, because I had gone to probably 6 other schools within my career before that. So I'd already done jiu-jitsu for 12 years before I even got to their school, and I was only still a purple belt. So nobody's ever accused me of being on time. I really take my time when I do stuff. And so it took me a long time. I was a blue belt for 8 years. So if that makes any blue belts feel better out there.
High five.
Mohit, how long have you been a blue belt now?
I'm on, I think, year 5.
I was a white belt for 8 years.
Oh, amazing. Okay. So
we're on the journey with you. I mean,
he's made it.
You blazed the trail, so now we're trying to find all the shortcuts we can. Teach me how to breathe.
Amazing. Yeah. Oh man. So that's a big shortcut. Holy smokes. But so going back to Dave's, it was really nice. We had a huge school, and we would do on Tuesday nights, we had a marathon roll, which they came up with which was 10 5-minute rounds with a minute break. So 1 hour of rolling, just full speed. And you may have even done, I would do maybe a class or 2 before that. And so it was like, man, it was a really wonderful test of where you were, what your cardio was like, less than cardio, right? How calm you could be, what kind of pace that you could keep, right? Because it doesn't matter what your cardio is. If you a couple of sprints, it's going to kill your cardio. A couple of hard rolls. So we had to tone it down and learn how to roll for a long time. And so the best thing, one of the coolest things that Dave would do, they were very into self-defense, which I was 100% on board. I originally started with Helson Gracie, and which is all about the applicable moves for self-defense. And what I think is we're creating an autopilot. So I've seen this happen too, where people get hit, and they get hit in the head, and they don't even know what happened the rest of the match, right? They get kneed in the head, and then afterwards they're like, how'd I do? Because I don't remember any of that. and so that is your autopilot. That's how you're going to perform when you really are not even making decisions. You're just in this body that has something that it knows how to do. So we focused a lot on creating that autopilot. And one of the great ways they would do it is when we were brown belts. We had a couple, I forget the name of them, but there was these special training days where they would pile everyone into a room and close the door and then take people out one at a time. And they would put you in this scenario of, maybe it was a real life situation where we have a few pro fighters there, and they had on boxing gloves, And yeah, and they would beat the hell out of you. And they would
Oh
put
my
you in certain
God.
positions, and you'd have to fight your way out of there. And you never knew what the scenario would be. And it might be 2-on-1. You never knew what it was going to be because you were locked up in that room. And so all you would know is we're all just, there'd be, 20 of us sitting in this room, and we're all fine, right? We just have our gis on, and someone else would come back, and their face was all red and covered with shots, and they're exhausted, and we're like, what happened? And they weren't allowed to tell you what the scenarios would be,
Right.
and that was a really neat way to learn how to be prepared to these uncomfortable situations and stuff. And so Dave was always coming up with unique training methods like that.
I mean, do you see something like that happening in today's day and age? I mean, I can imagine Hal's basically doing it at his academy, or maybe one of the traditional old school Gracie guys, but I don't see modern BJJ academies going that route. And it's a shame, really, isn't it?
We do have to test ourselves, and I think this is the advanced. These, you would only do this with your advanced guys, so nobody, and it's a closed day too, so nobody knows. You can't talk about it. Nobody knows what happened that day. And I probably already gave away too much. I'll probably use some. But we're gradually softening up the humanity a little bit, aren't we? We're all getting a little bit softer and more worried about what we say and worried about what we do. And so it's nice when you find a community that allows you to be yourself and to make mistakes. That's something that recently people really get a lot of scrutiny for what they say. But
Right.
man, maybe they made a mistake. And it's almost like you can't even, people take it they pull something from 10 years ago and take it for that's how you feel.
That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah, they pull out things from years ago and they hold you to it. Shit, man. So we met, I got your contact from Mike Morrell, and he had nothing but nice things to say about you. Tell us a bit about your relationship with Mike. How did you first meet Mike? I know you had a competitive match with Mike. And I want to hear that story in a second. But how did you first get to know Mike?
Sure.
How did that happen?
Yeah, let me think. So did we have any fight to wins before that? So we were both on the same professional fight to win card, I think twice. But it wasn't, my introduction to Mike was that match. It was Guerrilla Jiu-Jitsu, and we do a tournament every year that was, this is the best tournament. If you guys aren't familiar with this, it's we call it the Guerrilla Grand Prix. It's probably about a half a dozen schools in the area. It's just kind of like all the friends of the schools, but anybody's allowed to come. And they have a few gi matches. They have a few matches for people that are, for newer guys and stuff, so they can get their feet wet with the jiu-jitsu and or with competing in general. And you see it too, the white belts are just locked up and you can see they're just terrified, and it's a lot of fun. And then we do a no weight limit, no belt. So no weights, no belts. Come in and see what you got, and which is pretty neat. I think they do split it this year. Or they started splitting it where it was like 180 pounds below and 180 pounds above. So they split into two categories: big guys and little guys, or medium guys. Let's say 180 is a big guy. And then you just get to go after it. So if you're a blue belt and you think you can win this, come on, let's see what you got. And so that was the match that I went against with Mike. And we had I'll just talk about the match a little bit.
Yeah, please. Very interesting story.
So we had a great match, and he put it's no gi too, by the way. And I think you could wear a gi too. That didn't matter either. Wear a gi, don't wear a gi. That was what's so neat about this. It was just like, come as you are and see what you got. And everything was pretty much legal, I think, maybe other than heel hooks. Maybe, I'm not even sure. And so Mike and I, it's our first introduction to each other, and we get after it. And I tried for something and really missed it bad. And I'm kind of huddled up on the ground and just a mess. He was about to get me. It was bad news. But I got a hold of his leg and kind of forced it into a double leg takedown and ended up doing pretty well against him. And that's what it was. He put me in his favorite move. He put me in an arm triangle. a Darce. Yeah, he put me in a Darce, and I had to go back to my Wim Hof roots. There's a way when you're in a Darce, you create a frame, right? So I create a long frame across the elbows, and that goes up against the ground, so that opens up neck space. And then I just go into a Wim Hof session, and I just quietly go deep into the zone. And it's very tough to tap me if I have enough space to do some breath work. And so what was funny is after the match, so I think I won on points but after the match, even Dave was like, it was I just started learning the breath work or applying the breath work to jiu-jitsu and to the nerves of competing. I just started doing it. That was really the first time I applied it. And he goes, what was that? Like he was confused and impressed. He was like, you weren't supposed to beat Mike. Mike was definitely supposed to beat you.
Wow.
And it was pretty funny. Yeah, he didn't have faith in me. And I had been sort of preaching this. Man, there's this breath work that allows you to sort of get through this stuff. And I mean, I'm kind of old too. I mean, I was in my 40s at the time, right? And but it really worked. And then I got to meet with Mike afterwards, and he was a bit confused too. He was like, I love the Darce. What were you doing down there?
Mike's biggest sales pitch for you till today is I put him in a fully locked Darce choke, and he just
breathed
did not go out. He didn't go out.
Right.
And
yeah.
Go ahead.
That when you get start to get the headspace change, the tunnel vision, that's actually quite navigatable. And it's just like when we're doing the breath holds.
Yeah.
Once you get good at that, and that will bring up anxiety, panic, and fear, right? Because you're like, whoa, especially the first couple of times it happens to you. Mm-hmm. You start to, I think your response to it makes it worse. Yeah. So once you have been there a bunch, just like anything, once you do anything a bunch, you can start to relax there. All of a sudden, it's almost my happy place. When I start rolling and somebody gets me there, and I even know that I'm going to tap soon. I know the tap's coming, but I'll just kind of chill out there and just to see where that place is. And
you just hit the gates of the nether realm, and they're like, okay, wait, I'm coming back, guys. I'll see ya.
That's right. I'm flying on magic ponies and stuff, and eventually, it starts to turn evil, and I'm like, okay, tap.
Okay, I'm back. So I just to follow this up with, you mentioned that you were a purple belt for about 12 years, but you weren't doing the Wim Hof breathing during that part of your jiu-jitsu journey. And this was in your 20s and 30s.
You said blue belt, right?
Purple.
I was a blue belt for 8 years, but I'd done jiu-jitsu, it took me, to get a brown belt, it took me almost 15 years, something like that. So yeah, it was a long period.
So up until that point, within that 15-year period till your brown belt, you weren't really doing too much breathing work or breath work.
More with one step.
Oh wow.
No,
zero. I was doing zero.
So my question is, I know it's a long way to get to a question, but after that point, how would you say that it has impacted your physical self and your jiu-jitsu once you started breathing?
Yes. Listen to how dumb I was. This was my mentality then. I'd already made it to Dave's, and I was a purple belt. We had a really good guy who was 6'10", 6'10", 250.
God damn.
So
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
What?
He's a great guy. Big Jeff, you can call him. Unless you're 6'11", you can just call him Jeff.
He's just Jeff. My name's Jeff.
Oh my God.
So he was a very challenging opponent.
I
remember one day I'm wrestling with him, and I happened to get him first in the marathon roll. And then Matt Darcy, Professor Darcy, the owner of the gym, he was over there sort of coaching me, because you could just coach anybody against Jeff because you just didn't want him to get hurt. and Jeff got something good on me. And this is the first round. I was pretty fresh. He got something good on me, which made me tired, and I got on the bottom, which is the last place you want to be with Big Jeff. And what did I do? Well, I didn't want him to know that I was tired, right? So I slowed down my breathing, and I didn't breathe heavy. I sat there underneath trying to be quiet, trying to keep him from knowing what he did to me. But that's the exact wrong thing to do. That's the last thing you should do. So all I was doing is just my energy and anxiety my energy is going down, my anxiety is going up, and I just got into the worst place ever. And so after that 6-minute match, my first match of the day, I went to the bathroom and nearly threw up and was like dizzy and like could barely function after that. And I probably went home after, I don't even know if I did any more rounds. So that's how poor my application of breath work was to jiu-jitsu. Just doing the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do.
Right.
So, and I think that's a common scenario. I think we don't want to give our tell away, right? We don't want to let the other guy know. So we try not to breathe heavy or whatever. So exactly, I tell the guys.
I've done that, yeah.
It's kind of natural. It's okay.
Right.
But so what I tell the guys now is start breathing heavy before you even engage. And then they never know. So as soon as I'm there, they think that I'm exhausted. And now it's open. The rest of the match is open, and I don't have a tell anymore when I'm tired or something.
That actually is a very interesting competition strategy, which I am going to get my guys to do.
I think some of the guys are already doing it. I just wanted to mention. Yeah. I think Aman, one of our guys, competitive guys. I think I was rolling with him the other day in a small session. And before it started, he was just going in and out, heavy breathing. I was like, oh, wait, is he tired? Is he going to kill me? What's going on? So
that's what people think. They think that you think that people are charging up for something quite intense when you see people breathing heavy like that, right? It's a weird thing. I have a theory that this might be this is my own silly theory, but when people are breathing intensely, I know that it feels weird to people around you. So just in a workshop, if you're laying there breathing intensely, the person next to you is kind of it kind of creates an alarm in them, right?
Yeah.
Intuitively, it's kind of weird. And so I don't think it's actually the act. Again, this is just my own kind of goofy philosophy, but I don't think it's the act of breathing. I think that we are chemically changing when we're breathing intensely, and I think that people around you have some sort of sensitivity to that. I really do. That's kind of my own. I have no proof, of course, but it could be just the fact that we're breathing heavy. And
no, that's interesting that you mentioned we're chemically changing. For the people listening, what exactly happens when we start applying at least the Wim Hof method to our breath work? What happens to our bodies, and how does it actually make a chemical change?
So this is really neat, and so the Wim Hof does one thing. There's another great way to breathe. Just deep belly breathing does something else, and we can talk about that. I love there's an amazing study on that in particular, outside of the Wim Hof stuff. But the Wim Hof in general, the neat thing that it does is pushes you into a sympathetic state. We breathe nice and heavy. It's not the way you want to breathe every day or all day long. Right. It's an exercise. It's going to the gym for your lungs. So we breathe super heavy for a bit, and then your anxiety raises, and you get into the sympathetic state. So you can
which is fight or flight, correct? Sympathetic.
The fight or flight state. That's right. So we're simulating getting ourselves into this high level of angst, and where jiu-jitsu guys in general, we get it every time we train. We get in that high level. And so what you can do with the breath work chemically is push yourself in that state, practice bringing yourself back down, and you're going to release, because of the stress, you're going to release a bit of adrenaline. So, and actually, you're going to release so much adrenaline that they've compared it to somebody going bungee jumping for the first time. So somebody doing something that makes them so nervous, they release all this adrenaline. Well, actually, we can all just sit here, breathe heavy, use these tools to come back down. Now we're in a calm state, and our adrenaline level is higher than somebody that has gone bungee jumping or doing some intense activity. Mm-hmm. So that's how much control we have. And then not only that, once our adrenaline's up that high and we're nice and calm, later on, after a residual effect after a few hours is potentially our cortisol levels will drop lower sooner than somebody else who didn't do that. Say they just did their marathon roll, their adrenaline will be lower, and their cortisol will be typically, potentially higher, a few hours later. So it really is, and I think that is related to the amount of stress that it causes.
So cortisol is basically the stress hormone.
The stress hormone
in the body, right?
Right. And so I think what is happening is, I think of adrenaline as a comforting tool. So when you start getting sick, when you start getting the symptoms of being sick, your adrenaline then starts to raise in order to make you feel comfortable with these symptoms. But if you bring your adrenaline up before you get sick, then you no longer get these symptoms, these sick symptoms, right? That's what Wim proved in the 2004 Radbound study, where they all got injected with endotoxin. So be injected with endotoxin is a stressor, and just like Jiu-Jitsu is a stressor, and just like giving a speech is a stressor, just like maybe a family gathering, depending on your family, might be a stressor, like all these things. So you can mitigate that stress. Extended family is probably a little, but so you can really mitigate that stress by this chemical control. And then there's also the immediate changes where we drop our CO2 for a bit so we can hold our breath for longer. And we do try and isolate what exactly chemically is happening, but I think that you'll find that it's a cascade of interlocking, intermingling things that happen. So we release dopamine, again, just to get back to exactly what's happened chemically, but we potentially release dopamine, all these wonderful feel-good hormones, and we have a brainwave state change. So we get out less activity in the front, more activity in the brainstem, and that reducing activity in your prefrontal cortex allows you to get out of the ego mind a little bit, and get out of your emotional state a little bit, and just allows you to feel quite a bit better, because you're not quite so emotional about whatever the stress is or was or could be. So it's pretty neat.
That's fascinating. Do you know if there are any studies that link breathwork to, again, melatonin or the sleep hormone?
Yes, there sure is. And I'm happy to share. I love this study right now, so I'm happy to share this one. The one in particular was they took, so this is outside the Wim Hof stuff. They wanted to test out what the study was about was deep belly breathing. They called it just deep breathing. They gave it the acronym DB because they wanted to, again, demystify what modality it came from. They're just saying you just breathe deeply with your belly, very likely in through your nose, but they didn't specify nose, and you did it for 1 hour. What would that do to you if you just did that for 1 hour during the day? Well, it turns out that does a lot, which is, this still blows my mind. Just give me goosebumps thinking about it. It's so crazy. So they had a group of bikers that were cyclists that were preparing for a 24-hour race. So these guys are in very good shape. They're preparing for this very long race. They had an 8-hour bike ride the next day to prepare for this race. So it's a training session they're going to do. And they took 16 bikers, cyclists. They were all of similar stature, so very similar in size and weight. They had the same thing for dinner. They took 8 and 8. They split them up, and they all got a room to hang out in for an hour the night before the training. And half of them, they taught them deep breathing, deep belly breathing. Just lay there, sit there, whatever you want. Just breathe deeply, as deep as you can with your diaphragm for an hour. That's it. And then they tested their blood afterwards. They tested their blood after the training session, the 8-hour bike ride the next day. So we're talking almost 24 hours later. And the guys that did the deep breathing had a significantly noticeable higher melatonin, like lower oxidative stress in their blood.
Right.
And it was across the board. So it was like guaranteed, you do this type of stuff, guaranteed you have results. After, I can't even imagine, because that's such an intense workout, an 8-hour bike ride, I would assume that we would all sort of come back to baseline, right? I would assume we'd all kind of, you couldn't change
even out
much there.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I would have guaranteed that. I would bet money that was the case.
And I doubt there's any workout you can do in the interim to get such results without sort of draining the nervous system more, if you have something like strenuous like cycling to do. So if you only have that 8-hour window,
Yeah.
what can you
Yeah.
possibly do that oxygenates the blood, gets your energy levels and all your markers positive? Well, the other guys didn't have that in a room.
Right. Well, so is this, I mean, how about that? So 12 hours later, so just that changes your melatonin right there. Literally makes you probably feel less stress, less oxidative stress in I'll go over the exact study again. I think I mentioned it in our last training. Did I mention it?
Yeah,
Yes,
you,
you
you
did,
in
yes.
fact mentioned this story.
Okay.
I do recall.
So I'm going to get better and better at talking about the study and making it, tightening it up a little bit. So I will mention it again because I just think it's just, it's like so simple and it's so applicable to our whole life. Most of us don't have a bike ride for an hour, 8 hours a day, so the change must be even bigger potentially if all you're doing is working out for, a little bit. Yeah.
So to you personally, what were some of the effects physically to your body, and how long did it take before you were able to see like some long-term effects from these exercises, these breathing exercises?
Well, that's the neat thing is that it's very it's quite unnoticeable at first because you don't really while you'll get kind of high from the breath work, we are sort of engaging with cannabinoid and opioid receptors. They've proved that, which is very cool. Yes, I love it. So that feels great, but you really don't know how it's affecting you kind of later on in the day until you sort of start to read about it and they're really engaging into these tests. So, I mean, it affected me I didn't get the congestion anymore. I didn't get sick anymore. Right.
Right.
So that was a massive change. Like I was scared to not do it for a day because I'm like, I'm feeling good every single day. I don't want to ever get sick again. Yeah. So I just sort of kept it up. And then I started to realize the performance enhancement. And that's when I really got excited. So I have a deviated septum too. I never used to breathe through my nose just because it was, I used to think it was clogged with sinus congestion. What I've recently learned is that it's blood. Maybe you guys, I don't know if you know this or not, but your nose has erectile tissue in it that gets filled with blood. So not only does it's not congestion from mucus, it's very likely it's also, the swelling of blood in and out of it, which is really interesting. So I forget where I was going with that. Once I started,
you had a deviated septum. How that's changed?
Yeah. So I was just a pretty bad breather in general because I didn't use my nose, and I used to get really bad stomach cramps when I would run. Always growing up, I mean, I didn't even understand how people could run more than a couple of miles. Like it just blew my mind. I just thought I was not made for this, and I never will be. But what we learned is that you can maintain a level of CO2, and actually those things we were probably over breathing when we ran, and you can breathe shorter. You can use some restrictive breathing, and so then I'm learning how the processes work. And what I realized is it only takes a bit of foresight into what you need to do next. And then you use a breath pattern that allows you to do whatever you need to do next. So when you're running, if you need to keep running, well, you got to keep a level of CO2. So you got to use a restrictive breath work, even though your body is sort of telling you, hey, breathe really heavy and stop running. That's what your body's telling you.
Yeah, right.
Immediately. Yeah. Lay down right now and just breathe real heavy. So I've taken tried to understand what my body wants. Right. Tried to understand what my body does after certain breath patterns, which is the restricted breathing allows you to keep going, and then just applied that. So, okay, I need to keep going. All right, I need to apply this breath pattern. I need to recover. Yesterday we did Jiu-Jitsu in my yard with I have a great training partner now who's living with me and my buddy, and Big Mike. He's 6'6" and 240 right now. This is amazing. Again, I'm blessed to have these wonderful training partners, and we were going about noon, and we had to recover in the sun. The sun was hitting. It was about 90 degrees, maybe 100 degrees, and it is brutal. It was hard to recover, but we both just sit there and use different types of breath work, play with our own. We're probably doing a little bit different each other, but it all works. and we're just getting back, using some Hickson stuff to immediately recover, using some Wim Hof stuff once you recovered to charge up and to get that energy reserve, and then using a neutral breath, particularly in the beginning of the round, to make sure we have a level of CO2 just like we're jogging, and then we're able to preemptively control our pace. Yeah.
Right. 90 degrees for those that don't speak American in centigrade is 32. The metric system confuses people here, man.
It's boiling outside.
Thank you. And it was a hot 90 degrees. I'll tell you one fun story too. And we came up with a new move, or a new name for a move. So if you want to control a bigger person, for your listeners out there, for the smaller and lighter belt, the lighter guys and the younger guys, double underhooks when you have side control is probably the best way to control somebody who is a lot bigger than you. Maybe the only way. So you got to get double underhooks under them. And what we realized is, because it was high noon and the sun was really hot, that we call that move now, we call that sunburn. Because whoever has the worst sunburn after the training session, then we know you were on the bottom the most. And
you didn't win today.
Yeah. So I'm going to be yelling that out in tournaments when I'm coaching people now, like sunburn, so they know to go for double underhooks and pin the guy down.
Dude, that you mentioned running right now. That brings me to a couple of questions. I used to struggle with, so I used to run quite a bit a few years ago. I used to run almost anything between 10K to a half marathon every day.
Wow.
And when I first started out, I realized I was getting these insane stitches. Yeah, that sharp pain in your ribs or lung area. And what would really help with that is me breathing out really violently and then holding my breath. I would actually do short breath holds, and the stitch would just vanish.
Wow.
So I don't understand the science behind that, and that really did work. But
Let
the
me give it
breathing
a
patterns.
guess.
Go ahead.
Can I give it a guess?
Please.
So that comes from overbreathing. That the stitch. That's a good way to put it. And when you're holding your breath, you were raising your CO2 level. So very likely you had dumped your CO2 level too low from breathing too heavy. And we have to have that CO2 level at a certain point in order to make the oxygen bioavailable. So what was happening is you were getting in lots of oxygen, but inside your body, it's not available for your cells, because it actually has to use some sort of combination of the CO2 and the oxygen in order to make it actually like penetrate your cells. Or I'm not sure, exactly how it works, but I do know that Patrick McEwen of the Oxygen Advantage, who is a respiratory therapist for over thousands of people, he, is a big advocate of that restrictive breath work because of that reason, because of knowing and understanding the mechanisms of how you have to maintain that CO2 level. So I was in the same boat that you were, and I used to get those stitches, and now you can. I mean, you probably got over it through practice, right?
Dude, 1 week, and it was gone completely. And
Nice.
I haven't struggled with it since. And again, with running, breath work is so important. And you mentioned people overbreathe, especially in colder climates. When I first used to start running, I used to be a mouth breather, and I realized that at the end of the run, I'm almost wheezing. So I switched to just my nose, and I figured the breath coming in through the nose is it's warmed up, and I read somewhere because of your nose hair and nostrils and all that. So again, people don't know these things.
I know.
I learned these things in my late 20s, and I was like, what the fuck have I done?
So I have a theory on that.
Totally.
Miles, maybe you can shed some light on this as well.
On what, the running bit with your nose?
No, about alluding to what Miles also said earlier about people don't think about actively breathing, right?
Breathing, yeah.
So, for example, let's look at some of the functions of the human body that don't require us to think. That's blinking. It's the beating of your heart. I guess, hearing. If you're not
Yeah.
paying attention, ambient sound is always hitting your eardrums, whether you choose to listen to it or not. Just like when your coach is giving you technical advice and you're like, oh, wait, I did hear that sound.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
And likewise, breathing is just something instinctively humans, all creatures just do from birth till whenever. But I would say only a small population would really think about, okay, let me think about the air going into my nose, going down into my lungs, filling up my diaphragm. How can I hold it here? And then slowly letting it out. I mean, it's a very simple process, and we do it
Yeah.
infinite times in our lifetime. But how often do we draw our attention to it is, I guess, the point of a lot of your training and teaching, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And how closely it is connected to our nervous system. I mean,
Oh,
it is
absolutely.
like, it is your brain. Your breath work is like the fuel for your brain. So if we're dumping too much fuel in there or not enough, it can be detrimental, or it could be the driving force between, what you're trying to do.
And
Sorry, go ahead, Mohit, finish.
just to add to that, how did you make this amalgam of the Wim Hof breathing with the Hickson Gracie techniques?
Before we get into
You know
that,
what? Yeah.
Miles, before we get into that, I have some questions which I've just been dying to ask you.
Fine, you go ahead.
I'm
Then
gonna write.
Can we get to Hickson in a second, please, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned this during our seminar last month, that you use the Oura ring to measure your heart rate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how high do you actually manage to get your heart rate up during one of these breathing sessions?
I could tell you. I have the data. It's something fun. I forgot to tell you something neat that's been happening. So that sorry, just to tangent a little bit, but to talk about the Oura ring.
Sure, please.
So the belly breathing that I was talking about before, I've been practicing that a lot at night and in the morning. So if I'm hanging out and I want to go back to sleep, or at night if I want to go to sleep, I do a lot of that belly breathing. Mm-hmm. And what I've realized is the Oura ring, I have tricked the Oura ring into thinking that I'm in REM sleep or in deep sleep. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And so I don't know, I'm not sure exactly what's happening. I don't know if I'm getting the same benefits that I might from REM sleep, but I know that I'm getting these super benefits according to that study. I do know that something really great is happening to me, and it feels great. So it's just another piece of evidence to say that how good this stuff is for you, that my Oura ring thinks I'll wake up. My alarm, like this morning I woke up, and this time was a little bit different. I woke up for a moment, and it's light outside here. So then I put just a slim little face mask on, eye mask, and then I get into that breath work. And so I do 20 deep belly breaths, if I can count to 20, or I just keep recounting to 20 when I mess up, right? Mm-hmm. And I got myself for the first time ever, I got myself into deep sleep. Usually I'll hit REM at that point, but this time I went all the way to deep sleep and really did eventually fall back to sleep. But very interesting stuff. The Oura ring. Sorry, I lost track of what we're saying.
No problem.
So your highest heart rate.
How high?
Highest heart rate. Let's do it. Let's take a look. So the two things that I test in the moments feature of the Oura ring is I test doing a Wim Hof style breath work, and then I also test the just nose and belly breath work. Okay. So of course the Wim Hof style gets you up quite a bit higher, and that's what I'm gonna look at here. So I'm getting into the 70s, but my sitting heart rate in that same session. So I'll do a 10-minute breathing session with 5 minutes of in the front and the back of it of just relaxing to get kind of like a baseline of where I'm at and then where I end. Mm-hmm. So I got it looks like I get in about the 70s, and then I drop down to the 40s when I'm just relaxing, and sometimes even the 39 sometimes, which is kind of neat.
So essentially you get an HIIT workout sitting at home. You could potentially.
It's quite a workout. Yeah. I mean, it spikes and peaks in there.
I mean, you could actually do a cardiovascular workout in your room.
Yeah, you can see how it spikes and peaks with each. That's a full 15-minute session.
So I use something very similar. I use a Whoop strap. I don't know if you've checked them out. And they've introduced something brand new. They have a respiratory rate now that they've added after COVID came about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to share that with you. And this thing actually measures
heart rate variability.
Yeah, it's HRV mostly, but it actually measures the amount of breaths I take in a minute. So if you could see on your screen here, it's 17.1.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Breaths a minute. And they've actually added this for COVID. So if there is a huge change in this, I know something is wrong. Similar to your heart rate. And you really have to check this out, man. This is some...
the Whoop strap's really cool. I really like that video
stuff
that you can take while it's showing your heart rate, like in the video.
Yeah, it's a marketing tool, I'd imagine. That's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, I mean, I wish the Oura Ring had something like that. So the Oura Ring also tracks your respiratory rate at night, and then it'll give you a sort of an average, which is just quite accurate.
Do you know your respiratory rate just to compare? A useless, out of shape guy like me to somebody who breathes on a daily basis and is aware?
So I do have, let me see if I can find
somebody more woke than I am.
I do have the lowest lung capacity of humans. I'm in the bottom. I am the bottom 99%.
Humans as a whole.
Yeah, that's right. I went bold with that. But I used to, when I went to the doctor, and they would give you this thing that you breathe into, that like the little ball goes up, and I remember this often, they would change it. They would give me another one. They were like, this one obviously is not working because this isn't working for you. So they would and then I breathe into it again. They're like, nope, your lungs just suck. And yeah, no. So I just found it, my respiratory rate, and I have a whole, and this is an average for the evening.
Right.
So I have a whole month's worth of data, and I get from my high is around 18 breaths a minute. That's probably my high.
So you're awake, I'm guessing, yeah.
No, that's sleeping. That's my sleeping is 18. Which I know that I have to breathe quite a bit more than most people, and then my low is about 16.4. So you are you're right in the range.
No, but that's fascinating, and it'll be really interesting to find out. Now I'm going to do an experiment over the next month or so to see if breathwork could actually drop this. There was recently this there was a professional golfer who used to wear this Whoop strap in bed every night.
Oh, okay.
And there was a significant change with his respiratory rate. So he went to the doctor, and he turned out to be COVID positive because it spiked that much. So I mean, these things are, I mean, they're so intrusive and so accurate. It's scary. It's almost like you don't want to feed it too much information nowadays. But
there's always that thing you want to know more. You want to know, okay, what else can I do? How else can I do better?
Yeah, or it's tracking skin temperature now and stuff.
Is it?
Yeah, and they're actually I think they're working with too to track COVID. So I think there's a few organizations that are requiring people to have an Oura Ring in order to. I think the NBA is going to start doing it.
Damn, the future, yeah, man.
Yeah,
there's some weird shit.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And sorry, Mohit, go ahead with your Rickson Gracie. I didn't mean to put Rickson Gracie in the back seat. Rickson, by any chance, yes, even though there's a 0.001%.
All reverence.
I apologize. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's right.
What's your question?
Yeah.
So my question was the amalgam of the Wim Hof method and Rickson's breathing technique, and tell us a little bit about Rickson's breathing technique as well for the listeners.
Yeah. So the Wim Hof method is we breathe all the way in, and then you just let go. You just let go to where you have no air pressure in or out. So in most people, with the posture that you're in, a comfortable sort of straight posture, you have about 40% below the neutral zone. So in the Wim Hof method, we breathe with that upper 60%. And then when I got to meet with Rickson and talked with him in detail about his breath work, and then took his workshop, his 3-hour workshop, and he did his gave us a nice demonstration of the breath work for about 30 minutes. We focused, maybe even 45 minutes. We focused on breath work. What I realized is he was only using that bottom 40%. So it was literally the polar opposite of the Wim Hof method. And I actually, because Rickson has sort of done similar things that Wim has, right, where he's sort of conquered or created a really strong mental fortitude, and he's also been able to handle the cold. You've seen in the choke videos where he's in Tokyo in like a mountain stream, and I thought it's so fascinating because they've both Rickson and Wim are doing similar things across the world, really kind of on these parallel paths of human capability, but their breath works don't match at all. And I even asked Rickson, I'm like, what do you think about the Wim Hof stuff? And he gave a Rickson answer, which was like he gave Wim a ton of credit for what he's done. He's never disparaging about anything. I mean, I think he's just a real true master of mind, body, and soul. And he would compliment anything that he thinks is great. And but he said it's different than his own. And he left me hanging with it's different than his own. And I was like, well, what do I do? Then who's And so I didn't put the pieces together for probably another year. So I'm just not understanding, really how to apply Wim Hof stuff to exercise, understanding Rickson's a little bit. But it's, again, Rickson and both these guys broke it down so simply that it's like you almost have to learn how to apply it yourself in a more complex manner, because they're just giving you these principles that you can use. And then what I realized is the two of them met in the middle. So Rickson pushes it out, and then you recover back to neutral. You don't use any energy. You don't use any process to get air back in. You just created a bit of a vacuum, and that air goes back in, and then there you are.
Drops back into your diaphragm almost with the Rickson stuff.
And it's a little unintuitive too, right? You don't really think about that happening. And then Wim would just do the same thing, only he just expands and then let's go back to neutral. So both these guys are meeting in neutral, and they're also only using one process to breathe. So right there, you could say they're both muscles. They're practicing only using one set of the breathing process or breathing mechanisms.
Right.
Sorry, it says my internet's a little unstable. Hopefully,
we got you. You're clear.
Okay, good. So the neat thing is, what I realized is with Rickson's, Wim was focused on the gas exchange and creating these sensations, because he wasn't engaged with anybody, and he didn't have to really use strength to do anything for the moments that he was doing this. Where Rickson was focused on, again, some mental control, creating some chemical changes, but he had to remain strong, particularly in his core, right? You can't do a big Wim breath and then get punched in the stomach. You're done. You just knocked the wind out of you.
Yeah.
So I thought that was so interesting. And when I realized that they met in the middle, I realized, man, you have to create a more efficient breath pattern. So if you switch back and forth between them, that's probably fine, because just as long as you're breathing efficiently, really creating a significant gas exchange, and then when you're engaged with someone, you're able to create a strong core. So now you have to be around the neutral breath, and you have to be below it. And you realize that you can flex your stomach while you're pushing out, while you're breathing heavily, while you're dropping your CO2. And then one neat other advantage to the Rickson one is it doesn't make you dizzy, which is really neat. So Wim Hof style breath make you a little bit dizzy, you get a little loopy, and you can't have that when you're
going to fight.
When you're going to fight.
I use Rickson's when I'm dizzy, actually.
Yeah,
I'm gonna pass out at training.
Yeah.
That's what's neat. It's the most efficient recovery breath. It's the quickest, for getting out CO2, and it doesn't.
It forces you to
doesn't really
breathe
give you
in,
a head
right?
change.
It forces you to
It
breathe
causes-
in.
It does. Well, I mean, what it really does is why Hickson says it's so valuable is because he says that mental acuity shifts are because of a CO2 buildup when you're exercising.
Right.
So when you're engaged with someone and you start screwing up, then and especially too, that's usually when your heart's beating the hardest, right? So you've just been sprinting,
Right,
and then
right.
you can't make the right decisions. We've all been under some guy, and we know what he's gonna do, kinda. And we just can't keep up. It's like one step ahead of us always. And it's
Story
like
of my
mental
life,
acuity.
kids. Story of my life.
That's right. So you use Hickson's breath to recover your mental acuity, and then hopefully you can keep up. But
so
that's when it all came to pass.
Right. So it's safe to assume that your brand, Breath Fitness, perfect timing by the way, is a combination of Hickson's work as well as Wim's.
Yeah, it really is, and it's I consider it the full exploration of what breath work can do for you, and how to apply it in every aspect of your life. And the way we do that is we have to keep it dead simple. We have to keep it super, super simple so that you can use this stuff and so that you can do it on a consistent basis. So when modalities start to get too complex, and then we get layers upon layers of people's interpretation, it starts to get difficult to understand, which, I was a blue belt for 8 years. So I need stuff quite simple in order to capture it and use it on a day-to-day basis. So I'm really adamant about making this stuff as digestible as possible, and I'm probably almost too skeptical because I don't allow.
I think that's a good thing.
Maybe.
That's a good thing. Yeah. No, but for those that want to check out some more of Miles' stuff, he has a wonderful YouTube page where you can go through. Well, he just came out with a new 10-minute breathwork timer, which you can do with your eyes closed. He has another one which I use almost on a daily basis every morning. Again, it's Breath Fitness on YouTube. Miles, when are we seeing you come out with something on BJJ Fanatics? Breathing for BJJ.
Oh, yeah, that would be amazing.
Exclusively.
That would be amazing. Well, I would love to, one of my goals is, to get maybe a regular class where I could sort of refine a curriculum that, I would really want this stuff. I have a good couple of hours that I could do as a class, but I really like to test it out. And, it's just been so good. I've done a couple of these workshops, and so instead of a Wim Hof style ice bath afterwards, we'll do a marathon roll. So these are just for jiu-jitsu. Right. We'll do a full, I'll teach everybody the stuff, and then we'll do a marathon roll. And then, and what I love the most is these guys that are probably in their 30s or 40s that have been struggling to make it through a whole hour's worth of training, that will tell me at the end of this day that they've never had more energy, and I feel like I'm just giving back to where my faults were back when I was doing this. And if somebody would have applied, given me the stuff, how much it would have meant.
That's awesome, man.
Helped, right? But do you think you could? Well, you have Wim Hof. He certifies people. You see Miles Lucas certifying people sometime in the future.
I think the breath fitness will be so all encompassing that it would be at some point that would be neat. My buddy now, we kind of joke about it because he's my first person I've trained real closely and knows my stuff better than anybody. Mm-hmm. But he's basically my first breath fitness instructor, and he's amazing, and he's applying it to. He is also a mental health counselor for like underprivileged youth, and he just got his master's in that, and so he's applying it pretty significantly to anxiety control for preteens and teenagers. And I think we've had lots of different types of fitnesses throughout our life. The cardiovascular fitness, there's all these different fitness. I think breath fitness man, it encompasses all these things, and I don't think it's going away. And so I hope that this will be a pursuit that lasts a lifetime.
I'd imagine that this is the time for people to start getting into this, especially with how
Miles, we got
the shortage of ventilators in the world, and people to develop their own lung capacity and strength. I'd imagine that your business is booming right now.
The interest is up. I
right?
haven't been able. Yeah, I'm working more to make this, as completely sustainable. But yes, interest is up, and that's one thing. Next week, or at the end of this week, when we do our workshop together, one of the things we'll focus on is a few tips to strengthen your lungs. Mm-hmm. And again, we have to do it in a way that we could do it on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. But when you breathe deeply and you have a little bit of tension, and when you create that tension and it's a bit uncomfortable, we have found a weakness, which is great. So we can sort of unravel the fascia or whatever it is, doesn't really matter, but we can get rid of that tension in order for you to, on a daily basis, to be able to, have a bigger tidal volume and maybe create a stronger full breath than ever. And I think that's really going to benefit people health-wise, mentally-wise, in the future. So that's what we're doing.
I think that's a perfect segue into me telling people listening to this. So this is coming out tomorrow. So if you guys are listening to this, Miles is holding an online Zoom seminar Sunday Indian Standard Time, Saturday night on Miles time. He's in California. The seminar is $38 or $28.50 INR. Miles, how long is the seminar going to be?
So it's 90 minutes, and then sometimes the QA lasts, a long time afterwards. So
I am so excited for this, Miles.
Nice one, me too. Yeah, this is my life's work up to this point. Is this stuff. So
I think we need to get some controlled studies started, Miles, where we get some groups of people and we make them sit through this process of doing these breath exercises, so we have some empirical results. Like one of the
people passing out.
That's fine. They pass out doing jiu-jitsu anyway.
Yeah. I have a great study. I don't know if I should give up everything, but
no, you don't have to. It's up to you completely.
Well,
come on.
I have one more good one, but I'll save it for the class.
Sure.
And what the point is what the difference in this particular study has to do with pneumonia that people get, and how to prevent pneumonia, and how little amount of knowledge is needed to prevent pneumonia through some breathwork classes. So that's it.
Wow. No, I mean, that's ridiculously interesting. When was the last time you got sick, Miles?
I don't claim to be to not get sick anymore or anything like that. But what happens is we all sort of live on the edge of health, right? If you're feeling great, you may
that's a good way of putting it.
Exercise hard. Yeah. So my edge has changed. So again, right. I don't get the same congestion anymore. And one of the things for your listeners too, I tape my mouth at night, so it forces my nose it forces my belly breathing to get stronger, and it forces me to breathe through the nose while I sleep. And I think that's a massively valuable tool. So I still get sick every once in a while, but it's usually because I've pushed myself with a lack of sleep or too much alcohol, too much whatever else that I happen to be enjoying at the time. But that threshold, that's one of the side effects of this stuff, is that your capacity and threshold of a lack of sleep and drinking too much, all that stuff goes way up. So because right.
You should not have told us that. You should not have told us that. Now right. Everybody listening to this is coming to the workshop basically thinking, okay, I can get fucked up more now.
That's and for longer and sleep less. And hangovers, you can get rid of hangovers a bit better.
Oh my God.
Oh well.
Dude, you should do a workshop for alcoholics
Yeah.
on dealing with hangovers by Miles Lucas. Oh, that would be amazing.
But it would have to start the night before.
Yeah,
right?
it starts the night before.
You can pregame with the guys.
Yeah, you pregame with them and then you leave.
Awesome.
Oh that's a cool workshop. We'll have to write that one in the book.
Okay, so that's the next one coming up, guys, in the month of August. Miles Lucas getting drunk overseas.
Zoom call. So we'll do a Zoom from
Yo, it's gonna be 9 a.m. for us, man. We're gonna get
Miles is day drinking. Miles is day drinking.
No, we are day drinking. Miles is enjoying his Saturday night.
I'll have to for science. We're just doing
for science, we must.
Yeah.
Science,
all right. I think
Miles, do you have any questions for us? I mean, we're not very interesting people, but do you have anything for us before we wrap up today?
You guys, this was a ton of fun. This was one of my most fun podcasts I've ever been on. So, thank you guys for having me on. Thank you for accommodating again my time zone. And
not a problem.
And I look forward.
Thank you for doing this. I mean, we really do need to. I mean, this is one of the first few times that we've spoken to somebody who's actually looking to make a change and doing something. Well, I would say useful with their lives. Thank you for continuing doing what you do, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I've been following all the stuff that you guys are doing and the avenues that you're pursuing with getting mixed martial arts out there in India and providing a nice platform for people and stuff. And I think it's such a wonderful endeavor to do jiu-jitsu, to do mixed martial arts. It's such a lovely clearing of the mind. And I think we all need it. And when you miss it and you haven't done it in a while, you realize how powerful it is, which is kind of happening to all of us right now. And yeah, man, you guys keep doing what you're doing too.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. We will see you this weekend.
Yeah, can't wait, guys. Let's talk soon.
All right, have a good day,
ladies
man.
and gentlemen. Have a good evening.
Thanks, guys.
Good night. Cheers.
Thank you.
Good day.
Night.
Bye.
Cheers.
Good day to him.
Peace.
Bye.